Hello and welcome to the award-winning BYS Showcase. I'm Kashara Clay. Please welcome my co-host Paige. Today on the BYS Showcase, we will continue to focus on empowerment in our community. Would you like to find out what happened to the 13th man from courtside to the boardroom?
A legacy in the making. Stay tuned. We'll be right back to tell you about it.
Hello and welcome to the BYS Showcase. Today's guest is an entrepreneur and author, Davon Kelly. Welcome, Mr. Kelly, and thank you for coming on the show. Before we jump into the questions, I would like to read to our viewers a little snippet from a recent press release I read on the internet. And it states, a nonprofit sponsors first annual Summer Classic and Empowerment event held July 23rd to July 25th at the Greenbelt Marriott for young men ages 12 to 17. In recent months, television and newspaper have been consumed by stories of crime, riots, and despair in urban cities all across America. However, in Greenbelt, Maryland, a special program will engage 40 young men ages 12 to 17 in a series of fun activities and empowerment workshops led by Davon Kelly and a dozen of prominent men and women from local businesses. Just reading about you, and that gives us hope. So, my first question to you is, what is the 13th man?
Well, first of all, I appreciate you having me today.
Oh, okay.
I'm excited about talking about the nonprofit I started called the 13th Man.
Okay.
The 13th Man was brought about a vision that I had in helping young men reach some of their goals and heights that otherwise may not have made it because they didn't have the same opportunity that I had as an athlete.
Mm-hmm.
And it comes from my background as playing basketball, where a basketball team has 12 men on it. Mm-hmm. And normally when you make a basketball team during the summer, you get to travel, you get to see other states, stay in hotels, and things like that. So what happens to that young man who doesn't make that team? He doesn't have the mentors of coaches. He doesn't get to see some of the spaces that other of his friends are able to go to. And so one of the things that we wanted to do is not only foster their own activities, whether it be interest in entertainment, interest in school, interest in computers. We wanted to try to help them become better athletes. Mm-hmm. So we also are having basketball camps, football camps, lacrosse camp, golf camps. Oh, wow. So maybe that 13th man not only becomes the guy who was just cut, but also makes that team. So next year he can also partake in some of those activities.
Okay, so you instill hope.
Absolutely.
Okay, so how did you come up with the name 13th Man?
Again, because of my background in basketball, usually a basketball team is made of 12 young men, 12 men, and it's usually a 13th man. They say, hey, I was just a 13th man, which is usually the last cut. So our goal was to help that guy become part of that 12-man team.
Okay.
I read some information that stated that you turned your dream into a nonprofit organization. What was that dream?
To help young men. When I was growing up here in Prince George's County, there were a lot of people who took hold of me and said, hey, you can be something different than what the papers described you to be. And I wanted to do the same thing. It's part of giving back. And I think one of the things you don't want to do is stand back and say, I wish I could have done something different from young men. So again, even though I have a pretty successful business outwise, I get a lot more satisfaction at helping a young man become different, become something more than what people think he can be. And now, with the way now society, and I think it's even more apparent that we need these kind of organizations.
And how does your nonprofit organization help the community?
Every day. Every day we bring in, we hope to bring in kids, young men, to come in and talk about things that are going on in school. Maybe they just need an ear to listen to. We're going to have a tutorial service. We're going to have athletic one-on-one training. So whatever we can do to make it a bit easier road for these young men. And again, a lot of groups get together with these young men and then says, hey, we want to do this for you and do that. I think from our standpoint, we want to listen first. What is it that you need? And then let's see if we can shape our organization to help those needs.
Okay. When I was reading about you, I read that, how you found out you got up, you got breakfast, and you found out that you were actually cut from the Bullets tryout roster. So in that moment, what were you thinking, and did you feel that your future was just done?
Yeah, so again, you mentioned the Bullets, and for that's because showing my age there is now called the Wizards, right? So yeah, so it was it was a morning like anything else. You get up. I had gone to the training camp for a few days, and it worked out pretty good. Thought I had a pretty good workout, and was home and got up the newspaper, and sure enough, my agent hadn't called me yet, and so they showed the roster of the people that are going to camp, and my name wasn't on it. It was sort of the first time as an athlete that I wasn't one of the best players, and so it's sort of a reality moment. But I think the foundation that had been set for me as a youth allowed me to accept that. Now, as a 21-year-old kid, you still said, okay, I'm going to prove someone wrong. But it was a dose of reality that says, okay, do I have a foundation to do something different? And as I said here before you, I guess I did.
Okay, and in that moment, is that what prompted you to create the 13th Man, since you actually became the 13th man?
Right. So I think it was the foundation of it to say that basketball isn't, or sports isn't the end all or be all. Obviously, I didn't start it for years later, but then when you go back and you reflect on some of the things that have now created that vision, that's probably one of the first marks to say, hey, you know, wait a minute, there's got to be something else. You've got to have a fallback on. And then hopefully the 13th Man will create some of those fallback opportunities.
Okay. When was the 13th Man established?
May of 2014.
Okay.
So it's been about a year going. Again, as you mentioned earlier, we had our first summer classic this year in July at the Greenbelt Marriott, where we had 40 participants, which was fabulous. We have our quarterly meeting in October, and we're going to have ongoing quarterly meetings. But now the first thing that's coming up, the next event is our October 5th golf tournament at Woodmore Country Club. So it'll get a chance where the youth will actually come out, speak to some of the sponsors, some of the donors, and really get us into the community with that.
Could you tell us what life was growing up like in Maryland and the differences that you see from, you know, being an athlete to now?
So I grew up in Prince George's County, right in Forestville, District Heights. And when I grew up, it wasn't considered one of the prominent African-American communities as it is now. Completely different. Now it's considered that. And so when we grew up, we dealt with racism from the police officers. We dealt with being stereotyped and all of that. And then sort of when I grew up, it was more you either went the angle of sports or you went the angle of illegal activity, if you will. I happened to go to the angle of sports. So I grew up, you know, staying in the sports, and it kind of separated itself. So I kind of straightened out. I had friends go the other way and saw it. So I made the decision early on to stick to that route, and I'm glad for it. And hopefully we'll be able to do the same with some of the young men in my group.
Okay. What would you like to say?
I understand you hosted the first annual Summer Classics camp?
Yes, so the Summer Classic was one of the things that I had always envisioned doing, and I didn't know we were going to be able to pull it off as quickly. We originally started with we were going to have 20 young men, ended up growing up to 42.
Oh, wow.
And it was a 3-day event. Three and a half day. We went to the Nationals game on a Wednesday, and then basically we stayed at the Marriott and had all-day sessions on Thursday, all-day sessions on Friday, and morning sessions on Saturday. And it was just a fabulous experience for the kids, for the families, and you don't really know what you have in it to give back until you actually get in a moment like that with 42 young men. So it was a great experience.
What changes have you seen in the young men that you mentored from before you started to after?
So one of the things we first did was says, in order to be respected, you have to speak confidently. And so one of the slogans that we had, we said, you know, why me, why now? And then we said, why not? And so every day we would start off our programs by saying that. And I would start off by going, why me, why now? And then everyone would say, why not? Then we ended with the presentation similar to how we began. Every kid had to come up and mention who they were, their name, and where they were from. At the closing ceremony, where their parents had seen them at the beginning on Wednesday, we had them come up again and again introduce themselves. And you saw the confidence that these kids, young men, had when they came up and spoke. And it was really pleasing to see that. And hopefully they're taking it along as school starts now.
Okay. There are so many changes, electronics rule our generation. How do you stay relevant to the youth?
So, having the youth talk to me every day, right? So I'm not the most media mongol there is out there. I have a few little accounts here and there, but if you stay in touch and communication, you learn a little bit. I do coach high school basketball. I've been coaching high school basketball for 14 years. So they educate Coach Kelly on here. You got to get on a Twitter account and things like that. And so we're gonna use that social media to kind of promote the 13th Man and not fight the lines of communication, but use it to our advantage.
So could you please tell me about your book, A Legacy in the Making from Courtroom to the Boardroom?
All right, so the legacy in the making from the court side to the boardroom, no problem, from the court side to the boardroom, was really driven off of a business conference that I was in Texas. And a young lady asked me, she said, "You've been involved in so many things. I own a couple barber shops. I've got a multi-million-dollar business. I coach high school basketball. I'm involved in all that. What's your legacy going to be?" Well, as an entrepreneur, your first thing is, I don't want to talk about what my legacy, I need your business, right? And I kept trying to get back to that, and she kept asking me the question. Well, I didn't really feel satisfied with the answer that I gave her on my legacy. I knew it didn't want to be money. I knew it wanted to be an imprint on what I did. So I left her and went upstairs to my hotel room and started writing down. If someone asked me that question again, I'm going to write it down. Well, as I started writing it down, I realized that my legacy didn't just start in that hour. It started when I was a kid. And so this book chronicles the journey of where I am today and how far I have to go. One of the interesting things about the book is at the end of each chapter, we have a few questions. So when you read it, you get to start thinking about your own legacy. And what we found was that young people have different answers than older people, but then if you ask the same questions on a different day, you might get different answers. And I think that's what is real prominent in that book.
Okay, so could you tell us, you hosted the Summer Classic. What is the Summer Classic?
It's a youth meeting, if you will, of young men that come in. We have mentors from around the Prince George's County area that come in and talk. There's sessions for about police, how do you handle police activity. There were sessions about entrepreneurship. There were sessions about money management. We had physical activities with basketball, football. We had some coaches come in and speak to them. We're going to do more one-on-one training. One of the things that we did, I partnered with SunTrust, that we had each of the kids open up an account at a SunTrust bank, in which the 13th man donated $25 to their account, and we basically opened up sort of kind of like a company matching program. For every dollar they put into the account, the 13th man would match that account. So we learned a little about savings as well. So it was just a great event.
So tell me how the financial management workshops, how they help these young men.
So if you knew if you had an opportunity to put a couple dollars away when you were 12, 13, 14 years and watched it grow, you wouldn't have to work. And if you thought about that when you were 12 or 13, then you would do it. Unfortunately, at 12 or 13, we live for the day. We live for that dollar spent in that day. What we try to do is, savings is paramount to what you want to do in life. It will be the vehicle you use to be successful. So if you start off now at 12 to 13 years old, 14 to 15 years old, you've already got a running start on that. Something I didn't do. You know, I said, hey, look, that sounds great, but I need that money today. And so hopefully the 13th man is not only educating them on why you do it, but on how to do it. A lot of people say it's easy to walk to a bank and open up an account, but what does that bank actually do for them? And so hopefully with the partnership with SunTrust, we'll be able to do that.
Thank you so much.
Perfect.
We will be right back.
Thanks.
That's okay. Sounds good. I can't wait to read it.
Gaining weight was easy. All I had to do was sit down and eat. Losing weight's a lot harder. I have to work at it every day. But with every step, I lower my risk for type 2 diabetes and heart disease. And that makes every step, every choice, every day very much worth the effort.
Learn how you can help stop diabetes by losing weight, eating healthy, and staying active. Visit checkupamerica.org or call 1-800-DIABETES.
Welcome back. If you have just joined us, we are talking about empowerment in our community. We are talking to Mr. Davon Kelly, who is doing just that. He just recently launched and sponsored his first annual Summer Classic empowering young men.
Okay, my first question is, who impacted you the most in your life?
So it starts off with my dad, and it's the first chapter of my book. He was around me. He was my best friend. He's passed now. He was my best friend, my mentor, and my confidant. And so everything that I am centered around what he taught me as a kid growing up.
What message do you think he would have for you today?
To not allow naysayers to tell you that you can't do something. When I started Novad Management Consulting, my consulting business, people say that you couldn't do it. I did it. When I opened up a couple barber shops, they said you can't put a barber shop in Forestville. You can't do that. I did that. When they said, hey, there's too many groups out here already mentoring young men, why can't you do that? And he would say, don't let them be the influence or define where you're going to be. And it rings to me today. So I don't take no, and if it's a challenge, if you tell me it's 20, I'm going to try to do 30. And that's what he's always instilled in me.
Okay, it's good to hear. Paige, what do you have to add?
What is your message to the youth?
To not allow people to define you. I cannot say that enough. I mean, you pick up the paper every day, or in this day and age, you get on the internet every day, and you see how they define you. For instance, when we talked earlier about, our group is to mention 12 to 17-year-olds. So the first thing that comes out in your mind is at-risk youth. That's not what we're about. We're mentoring 12 and 17. So the question would be, how do you change that mentality, and you don't let people define you. You break that mold, and hopefully this group will allow, this organization that I've started, the 13th Man, will allow that to happen.
How do you raise money for your nonprofit?
Through sponsorships, and donors, and really through people committed to helping the young men and says, hey, look, I want to make a difference and I can help financially. We also have a golf tournament October 5th at Woodmore Country Club that I mentioned earlier, that I would love for people to come out, meet some of the young men that came to the Summer Classic, meet some of the young men who are coming into our October quarterly meeting, and just give back, because you can't do some of the things that we want to do without obviously financial support. But at the end of the day, it's not just the financial support, it's the support. So we'll take volunteers, we'll take people that just want to come out and shake hands, tell their story. That would be fabulous for us.
What role did sports play in your life?
Everything. I grew up in sports, and that's why the 13th Man is about. It's about the young man who didn't make that team, who wasn't afforded the opportunity that I was. And so hopefully that would do it. Again, I've coached basketball for 14 years, mentoring young men from a coaching level. So usually everything that I do has some sort of sports cliche to get it done.
And your book, From Courtside to the Boardroom, and it emphasizes the tie between sports and business. What are three lessons that you learned on the court, and how can that help any student become successful?
Be prepared, which is the #1 thing that I think you have to be in life. Be prepared. Be able to overcome adversity, and at the end, be able to celebrate a victory, a win, or a contract, or a success story, respectfully of your others, because I always believe you're only one day, one moment away from being a loser or in a bad situation. And so if you can put that in the sports analogy, it's the same way. When you go out onto a court, you're one play away from not being victorious. When you come into the business world, you're one play away from not being successful at that contract or at that business opportunity.
How important is it for, not all students are lucky to get a college scholarship, but what do you tell that young man who didn't get the scholarship that he wanted, and who may not be able to go to college for that specific sport? What do you tell him?
It's interesting because I just met a young man who asked me the same thing. He had got hurt his senior year in football, and I was asking him what he was doing, and he said, I'm not sure yet. I would tell him, figure out a way. Right? Don't let that define you. Figure out a way. There's opportunities all over. There's, the internet allows people different things than I was allowed when I was getting ready to go to school. So they can find grant money. They can find scholarship. I always believe if there's a will, there's a way. You'll figure it out and you'll get there. If you really want that bad, you'll figure out a way to do it. And again, it's easy to sit back and say, hey, I didn't get that scholarship, so now what do I do? But in fact, that scholarship was only going to take you for 4 years. There's a whole lot of life to live. And so you have to figure out, as I mentioned earlier, to overcome that adversity and then turn that challenge into a success story. There
are so many nonprofit organizations that are helping the youth what sets you apart from them?
I'm not sure if the 13th man sets us apart. I think what we want to do is be a part of the community that's helping our youth, right? So one of the aspects, if you did want to set us apart, is not only are we mentoring you, we are doing the sports component with it as well. However, again, I don't need to be different. I just need to be one of many. There are plenty of youth around here that need assistance, right? So there's plenty of young men, young women going around that could be a part of our organization along with other parts. So we don't necessarily want to be different than anyone else to say, hey, come join us rather than somebody else. We want to be inclusive of those organizations to help all youth of the county and in the state of Maryland.
Do you have a question to ask?
Can you explain more about Novad? Like, what is it?
So Novad Management Consulting is a consulting firm I started back in 2003 in emphasizing in project management, financial audits. We just won a big loan servicing contract in the areas of consulting for the federal government. We do mainly federal government. We do some public practice. Novad is Davon spelled backwards, so it was an easy name to come through. It was an easy name to come through, and we've been pretty successful. We're headquartered out of Landover, Maryland, but we do have offices in Oklahoma City and Atlanta, Georgia.
Just going back to the nonprofit, you said that the young men were ages 12 to 17. Why 12 years old? Because
I think that's the first time that you actually hit the mark where you're saying, hey, okay, now it's time for me to make a difference. I'm getting ready to go to junior high school, and then what am I going to do now? Am I going to go this path to stay over here with these guys, or am I actually going to make a difference? And I think that's where you start making your mark. And I think if we can start influencing them at 12, because that's when I started. That's when I picked up a ball, 11 or 12 years old. I think we can really make a difference at that. And I think it becomes easier as they grow older. At least for me, it did. And that's all I can use as my background to do that.
Do you, when the young men, they're 17 and that's the cutoff, what do you tell them when they, leave?
Don't forget me. Don't forget me. Come back and speak to some of the youth that we have in our program still. But I'm not going anywhere. You can be in college and come back and sit down in front of me and tell me what's going on, and we can still be a mentor to you. I mean, I don't want the 12 to 17 to define and says, hey, we're going to forget about you. My hope is that you come a part of the program and you become the 13th man. You become our organization, that I could sit back and allow you to talk about what the organization meant to you and how it defined you. It's a lot easier for people to sell your organization if they've already been through it than to tell you what it's going to be.
Okay. Do you have anything to add?
I want to know more about your barbershop. Like, when did you open that up, and like, why?
So I've always wanted to own a barbershop for some reason. I don't cut hair. I don't know how to cut hair. I don't profess it. But I do think it's an opportunity for people to foster discussion, right? So my dad always took me to the barbershop, and I'd sit around and I'd listen to all kinds of discussion, from politics to sports to the neighborhoods and things like that. So what I try to do is have a shop where women, children, men can come in, they can talk about what's going on in the world, they can talk about sports. We still have the barbershop feel to it, but you don't walk in and have this idea that, hey, I'm a little nervous, I'm not comfortable here, and so we try to create that element. But the main thing, one of the main things I wanted to do is create an opportunity, an entrepreneurial opportunity for each of the barbers. Their chair becomes their own structured or company. So I always felt like, why can't you run your chair just like I run my company, Novad? And so what's happened is, once they took that pride in doing it, all of a sudden that becomes their office. We've gone through the marketing materials, we've gone through the financial accounting part of it, and so it's really been a give back. And plus, I just like being around positive people, and I think we create a positive atmosphere, which creates positive people. So once they walk out of there, people walk around and they say, hey, look, I enjoyed my stay there. And so without being part of the 13th man, you still do some of the mentorship there.
So you have your nonprofit, you have multiple barber shops, you have your own consulting firm. What's next?
Not sure yet, right? And I think that's part of what's being fun and what's grown, what makes me get up in the morning. You know, I'm one of those guys who likes to take a piece of clay and mold it to what I want to do. I've talked about opening up a salon that I don't know anything about, right? And so I'm not sure if it works, right? But I'm sure somebody's going to come and tell me that it can't work. So then it's going to drive me to do it. So I'm not sure what's next. Right now I'm focusing on the nonprofit. That's my first goal. But if there is an opportunity that pops up that I think I can make successful or make a difference, I'm going to go for it.
you have anything to ask?
No.
Okay. Is there anything in Prince George's County that you see that you'd like to change specifically?
So I don't know if I would like to change it. What I'd like to see is more local businesses develop here in Prince George's County.
Okay.
One of the unfortunate things for me is that we have not been able to do any business. Novet has not been able to do any business in the county.
Okay.
And as I grew up here, there's a lot of business minded people here in the county. But yet when you look at some of the county things that are going on, you will ask, well, what business, where are you located? And they'll tell you, I'm from the West Coast, or I'm from here. So I think if I had one change, I'd like to see some more area businesses do more work in the Prince George's County area and in the state of Maryland. And I think people have voiced their opinions to the county executive, Sharon Baker, and I think he is trying to make a change. And as we keep growing, hopefully more opportunity will come to small minority businesses like myself.
Okay. So you've gone through your, basketball and giving back. How have you changed as a person?
I've grown older. I've grown older, but I think I've become wiser. So I use some of the past experiences to make a difference. I mean, no one's perfect. So some of the things that I do today is because of failures before. That's part of being an entrepreneur, right? You hear way more no's than you hear yeses. And if you could make a difference or make a change or make a different decision, you would. And so for me, every day is a learning experience for me. And I try to take that, pocket it, and then the next time I do something, try to use that to help that decision on.
Do you think that Prince George's County is constantly changing? How important are the influence of these young men?
I think it becomes a county. I was born and raised here in the county, and I came back to the county. So if you start here and you start with that good foundation, and then hopefully you stay and the businesses grow, why can't we be a thriving business? I think that's what my personal opinion is. That's what's I think happened to the county and how we grew. There were a lot of people that grew up just like me here in Prince George's County, and then didn't leave. We didn't move to Atlanta. We didn't move to Houston, that big thing. We stayed here and we grew ourselves here and gave back to this community. And I think that's what hopefully the young men of today will continue to do and see themselves in the mirror and says, hey, look, I can be successful just like Mr. Kelly.
What is it about PG that brings people don't want to leave?
Because people say PG. Right, so now they have it Prince George. I think it's because it's a community in which you can see African Americans thriving.
Sure.
It's an opportunity in where you can grow businesses. The National Harbor is a prime example. If you asked me back in 1980 when I was a young kid, will we have something like the National Harbor? I would say there's no way. But if you asked me the same thing about an African American president, I would have said no way as well. So I think there's an opportunity here to grow, and I think we are trying to grow. So I would encourage all to take a look at this area and the school districts as well. They're changing.
Okay. Thank you so much for coming on the show. We cannot thank you enough for all that you're doing for our community, for taking matters into your own hands, and for doing something that is not only giving it back, but it's going to pay off. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Davon Kelly, it has been a pleasure learning about all the great things you are doing for our community and our young people. We really appreciate you coming out, and we'd like to thank you for stepping up to the plate and doing something. You didn't just talk about it, you did it. We thank you again.
Here we are, 2013. We all depend on technology to communicate, to bank, and none of us know how to read and write code.
The first program I wrote asked things like, what's your favorite color? Or how old are you?
I wrote a program to play tic-tac-toe.
I first learned how to make a green circle and a red square appear on the screen.
You're just trying to make something, trying to transfer something from your mind to the computer or to a tablet. It's it's an experience.
The whole limit in the system is just that there just aren't enough people who are trained and have these skills today.
The programmers of tomorrow are the wizards of the future. You know, you're going to look like you have magic powers compared to everybody else.
Great coders are today's rock stars. That's it.